there, welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Angie and I'm a chemist who loves makeup. So today we're going to be talking about a new line I saw posted on Trend Moves page from Becca Cosmetics. And it is their Zero No Pigment collection. This consists of the No Pigment Virtual Foundation and a No Pigment highlighter for face and lip. But I found the ingredients on Cult Beauty, so we're gonna break down the ingredients in here, what they would do in a formula, and my thoughts on this formula. How I think it'll work based on the ingredients. Right off the bat, this line reminds me of the Emperor's New Clothes story. So these guys come and see this Emperor and tell them that they can make these clothes which will appear invisible to those of people with low intelligence. So he hires them, sees them weaving the clothes, but he can't see them, but won't admit he can't see them because he doesn't want to appear dumb. And then basically parades in front of all of his subjects in his underwear. So that's what this reminds me of, because this is a foundation that has no pigment to it, which seems like part of the basis of a foundation. So first we're going to start off with this virtual foundation. And they say that this utilizes the company's clear light blur technology. From the pictures, it basically appears like the model goes from shiny to matte. Again, there's no color in this foundation. Its sole purpose is to kind of just blur out inconsistencies. If you have any color issues, like if you're a little red like I get, it's not gonna cover that up. And looking at it, it's a pretty short ingredients list, comparatively speaking. First ingredient's water, very, very typical. Next is sodium acrylates cross polymer 2. This ingredient right here is going to be what gives us the visual effect that we see. This is a film former. There are a lot of different film formers out there, and this just happens to be the one that they chose. So what I can find from a manufacturer of this ingredient is that it's going to form a gel-like consistency because it's very, very good at absorbing water. And this happens at a pH of 7 to 9. My guess is this is going to be closer to 7 to keep the formula a neutral pH. You don't want anything too acidic or too basic. That's going to start having corrosive properties. But when this is spread on the skin, which has a lower pH, it then liquefies out and is able to be applied easily on the skin. Most of the blurring, smoothing primers we've seen are opaque or do have a slight tint to them, but I don't necessarily think that this one is super revolutionary. And typically as you mattify something, it is gonna blur out those imperfections because it's not reflecting as much, which is what would highlight the imperfections that you wanted to cover up. So the next few ingredients are all humectants. This means that they draw water to themselves, and this in turn hydrates that top layer of skin. These three are glycerin, butylene glycol, and hyaluronic acid. Hyaluronic acid is the one that is highlighted in this formula, but glycerin and butylene glycol are at much higher concentrations and are probably going to be doing most of the heavy lifting in terms of hydrating the skin. Hyaluronic acid is good at it, but usually the concentration can't be above 2% because it'll start to affect how the formula feels. It's usually just an extra trendy ingredient that they put on there. It does have an effect, but glycerin and butylene glycol need a little bit more love for all the hydration that they do. And the polymer that I mentioned earlier is also going to help prevent some water loss. This is very important because you can have all these humectants, but if you don't have anything that can prevent water loss, it's just going to evaporate away. This is the case like if you use a sheet mask on an airplane or in a very dry climate and you take it off, the air around you is very dry, so all that water is just going to evaporate and you're going to be left feeling dry. And so it's important to have something with more occlusive properties in order to keep that hydration in and prevent water loss from your skin. PEG 40 hexane diol is an emollient. Emollient means that it's going to give a soft feeling to the skin, so when you apply this, it's going to feel nice when you're applying it. So when you apply this, it is going to have a nice texture when putting it on your skin. Our preservative system here is 1,2-hexane diol, caprylyl glycol. Having a good preservative system is especially important in this case. Water-based or ingredients that are water soluble, and having water is going to lend itself to bacterial growth, so it's important to have a good preservative system to make sure we don't have any of those contaminants. So the timing of this to me seems very interesting. Since people are wearing masks, they're not wearing a lot of makeup, that this foundation seemed to come out. I hope this wasn't a rush decision to kind of adapt. They did have their another concealer recently that did have to get recalled due to microbial contamination. So I'm hoping that this formula was planned for a while and wasn't necessarily rushed, and that the proper tests were done, because I would hate to see another incident of microbial contamination from the same brand. The next ingredient is Carbohymer, and this is added as a thickener. Like I said, this is water-based, so you need to thicken it up to have some consistency, so it's not like you just have like a little puddle in your hand that you have to like splash on your face. The next ingredient is tromethamine, and this is going to be a pH buffer, meaning that this is added to formulas in order to keep the pH in a specific range. It is important to keep the pH consistent and not changing over time, because pH changes can lead to a lot of things. It can affect not only how the formula holds up, if everything separates, but also it can throw off the preservative system. Preservatives work in a very finite pH range, and as you start to drift from that desired pH range, these preservatives become less effective and will lead to microbial growth, which we don't want. So overall, I don't really like how they called this a foundation. I think being a foundation means you have to address people's issues of trying to have more even color, if you have redness, discoloration, which is basically the reason that I would use a foundation. I would call it a primer or something else. I wouldn't necessarily call it a moisturizer, because I don't feel like there's enough occlusive ingredients to use this solely as a moisturizer. It seems kind of like an after effect. And even in this case too, they also say you can layer another foundation on it. So it's definitely more primer-like. I wouldn't call this a moisturizer because it doesn't have occlusive ingredients. Occlusive ingredients means it forms a barrier, and this prevents water loss. So I don't think it'll keep your skin super hydrated. In this case, they didn't use any silicones, which are very common of mattifying primers, such as dimethicone, which is going to give you a matte appearance. Based on the way that the formula is, it's more of a, it's water-based, and you would need emulsifiers and whatnot in order to incorporate the dimethicone or incorporate an oil type of ingredient to help prevent water loss. I also didn't really like that they say that this adapts to all skin tones, because it doesn't adapt. It's just clear, so it's not adapting, it just is. It just works for all skin tones because there's no pigment. So I think to say adapt makes it seem like it's gonna adjust based on your skin tone. And I also feel like they're really trying to sell this and make this work, because they also said that you could use it for your brows, which I definitely think you could, but it's kind of a hard sell, in my opinion. I think Becca makes some good products, but this just isn't it for me. Now we're gonna move on to the highlighter. And if you've learned something today and you wanna learn more about the science behind makeup and skincare, do not forget to click the subscribe button. The first ingredient in here is hydrogenated polyisobutene. This is gonna be a synthetic oil, and that's what's gonna give you that shine. Very common in a lot of lip glosses. And because it is an oil, it's also going to help repel water and keep your skin hydrated underneath, and will also leave the skin feeling soft. And the next two ingredients are used in conjunction with one another. These two are copolymers. I will list the names right here because it's very long, so we ain't going to get into that. And this is what's going to give the product more of a gel texture, so it'll apply nicer than just an oil would. And this also will help prevent water loss from the skin. The last ingredient is BHT, which is a preservative. Also, fun fact here, it's been shown in studies that BHT can help treat cold sores. So if that is also an issue for you, maybe this will be a dual function product as a lip gloss and to treat cold sores. I don't know if there's enough in this formula where it's shown to be effective in helping that, but it is a fun fact, so I hope you appreciate that. So like I said, that was a very short list. It will work as a glossy highlight, yes. I don't think it is a bad product, but it might feel a little bit greasy. And yes, this is gonna have a dual function as a clear lip gloss. And I also think it's interesting because the price of this corresponds very closely to that of their lip glosses, but obviously this doesn't have any pigment in it or anything, and a whole lot less ingredients. I believe most of Becca's prices come from their packaging. They have good products, but you don't always get a lot in your product for how much you're paying in comparison to other brands. So the one credit I will give Becca is they don't put a lot of extra ingredients like natural extracts or essential oils into their products. They pretty much just put in there what makes the formula function. And this is really good if you're sensitive, because a lot of these natural extracts, essential oils can be sensitizing because there are so many different compounds in them. You can be allergic to anything, but that's just kind of increasing the chances that someone might be allergic to something. So by limiting the number of ingredients, this might be good for people who have particularly sensitive skin, so I do have to give Becca credit in terms of that. So overall, I think this line just isn't something I would go for. I don't think that the products are bad, but I think the way that they're being marketed as like a zero line, I know it grabs attention. It feels very Emperor New Clothes-y to me. And I think the fact they're trying to push these as multifunctional shows that they believe this is gonna be a really hard sell. If this is something that's interesting to you, I think that these won't be bad, but they do kind of have a higher price tag for the amount of things that are going in there. And the marketing term that did make me roll my eyes was their clear blur light technology. There's not very many ingredients in here. Your clear blur light technology was one ingredient that was a film former, and film formers are very, very common. It's not anything like super special. I mean, I know you have to make it sound fancy, you gotta stick out, but man, does that seem like a stretch. So if you learned something today, don't forget to click the like button and let me know down below what other cosmetic lines I should look into. And make sure you hit the subscribe button so you will not miss a video where we talk about the science behind makeup and skincare. And with that, I will see you in my next video. Bye!